seen a blind man cross the road, trying to make the other side, baby? Ever seen a young girl growing old, trying to make herself a bride? So what becomes of you, my love?
Now I am become death, destroyer of worlds.
Pray that he's still out there, somewhere.
Well, shalom and welcome. Pleasure to be with you here today. As always, you join Dr. Stephen Pidgeon of Cepher Publishing and myself, Jessica Knock, Eating Wild Honey and Locusts, one of the co-founders with my husband of this channel. And we just love coming together and meeting with you every Tuesday, always thanking you for the interaction, the prayers during the week, the questions, and just the appreciation running with us in this journey. And sometimes it's harder than others. This and last week has been particularly hard for the whole team, Dr. Stephen Pidgeon, and some of you have just been wonderful prayer warriors, really listening to the Ruach without a word being said and just carrying us through. And for that, we all want to thank you. Right now, some of the most prevalent things that I am seeing you're wanting us to cover are to do with common law and Babylon and coming out of Babylon. And actually, what a wonderful way to start, because on Thursday, unbeknown to myself, Dr. Pidgeon on the dig, he started with judgment on the house of Babylon, titled The Hour Has Come. And he did say that he was going to continue that here. And I felt that was a really prophetic one and also important to continue and touch on, because these are your clarion calls. These are your cries that you're asking to have focus on so that we can walk and we can develop in this together. So, I want to come from the perspective of what it means to come out of Babylon. Now, when you think about that, just hearing that come out of Babylon, coming out of Babylon, what does that mean? You see, because Babylon is made up of all the nations of the earth who are sipping from her cup. They were all sipping from this cup of the Scarlet Woman. You hear that often said, and so I want to associate both together. But you see, Yahuwah is going to make Babylon sip from his cup. Yahuwah is going to make Babylon sip from his cup of wrath, which is double the strength. And it consists of those 7 vials. So that's important to understand. Now, Revelation 18, verse 4 says this. Stuart, if you can bring that up, that would be great. And I heard another voice from heaven saying, "Come out of her, my people, that ye may not be partakers of her sins, and that ye may receive not her plagues." This is what I want to emphasize, the word her. It is a reference to Babylon and what I've already drawn out to the Scarlet Woman. Verse 5 says, "For her sins have reached unto heaven, and Elohim has remembered her iniquities." 6, "Reward her even as she rewarded you, and double unto her the double unto her double according to her works in the cup which she has filled. Fill her double measure to her." But remember that Yahuwah's cup is the strongest strength of wrath. It's saying that Babylon shall be recompensed double. The cup of Yahuwah's fury is now incensed, basically. Verse 21. "And a mighty angel took up a stone like a great millstone and cast it into the sea, saying, Thus with violence shall the great city Babylon be thrown down, and shall be found no more at all." And that is what we see prophetically will happen. If you go back to verse 2, just higher up, it says, and he cried mightily with a strong voice, saying what we commonly know, Babylon, the great is fallen, Babylon is fallen. And it's become the habitation of the devils and holds every foul ruach. That is what we're contending with, no less today. Every foul ruach, the habitation of Hasatan, of the devils, evil at work that you see deployed through some of the most evilest men and regimes and institutions that we have in our time. It is happening in our time. And you know, when you go to Jeremiah 25, Stephen, Stu, if you could bring up Jeremiah 25, Yah is saying, you drank from the scarlet woman's cup, and now you're going to drink from my wrath, from Yah's wrath. That is the beauty that comes out, that prevails from Jeremiah 25. Because the judgment of Babylon is in a cup. Whose cup? Yah's cup. And it's that strong double strength of the against the scarlet woman's cup. Verse 15 says, for thus says Yahuwah, Elohai of Yisrael, unto me, take the wine cup of this fury at my hand and cause all, I emphasize the word all, the nations to whom I send you to drink it. Because so often, and I want you to consider this, we hear that Babylon is Israel. We hear that Babylon is America. If that was the case, then you would just have to move outside of Israel. You would have to move outside of America, and you're outside of Babylon. But here the word says all. And that's what I want to challenge you with. Verse 16, and they shall drink and be moved and be mad because of the sword that I will send among them. Okay, so this is the wrath. This is one of the elements of the wrath, the sword. What is the sword referring to? We've covered this so many times. The sword is referring to war, like the great sword, the great war. The sword, can you see how it's drawing out, how it comes out, how these things become alive through the word? When you look at it prophetically and you see what's standing out. Verse 17, then I took the cup at Yahuwah's hand and made all the nations, there it's confirming it to us, to drink, unto whom Yahuwah had sent me. That was the angel. The word all means every, not some, not a bit, not Israel, not just America, every. And I believe we should be looking at this in terms of World War III as well, in that context right now. Continuing, verse 26, and all, again, emphasis there, the kings of the north, far and near, one with another, and the kingdoms of the world, which are upon the face of the earth, the king of Shishak shall drink after them. Therefore, verse 27, you shall say unto them, thus says Yahuwah Sevaho of Eli of Israel, drink ye and be drunken, and spew, vomit, and fall, and rise no more, because of the sword, the judgment, which I will send among you, which Yah will send among you, to those who are deluded, to those that have drunk of her cup. The sword is referring to annihilation. It's referring to war. It's referring to that means, that method of death, that method of judgment. Verse 28, and it shall be, if they refuse to take the cup at your hand to drink, Yah's hand to drink, and they shall say unto them, thus says Yahuwah Sevaho, ye shall certainly drink. That means there's no escape. You drink of this cup, you drink of this wrath, you shall go through this. The nations that refuse the war, the cup, will be forced to drink from it. That's war, and that's what's coming. There is no choice. Verse 29, for lo, I begin to bring evil on the city which is called by my name, and should ye be utterly unpunished? It's a question here. And should ye be utterly unpunished? Ye shall not go unpunished. For I will call for a sword upon all the inhabitants of the earth, says Yahuwah, Sevahoth. Utterly unpunished, you will not escape, is what it's saying. Again, I refer you, World War III, and the emphasis on that word all, in terms of Babylon in terms of judgment, in terms of Yah's wrath. Verse 30. Therefore prophesy you against them all these words, and say unto them, Yahuwah shall roar from on high, and utter his voice from his holy habitation. He shall mightily roar upon his habitation. He shall give a shout, and they shall tread the grapes against all the inhabitants of the earth. There is so much dynamicism in that one verse there in 30. Can you imagine Yahuwah, the tribe of Judah, roaring? Would it not be multiplied roars and roars and roars and echoes? Would that not be alarming? Would that not be devastatingly scary and shake you in your very bones? His wrath from his holy habitation. When I think of that, I'm not just thinking of his hand. I take that further. I've been saying war, war, but what kind of wrath would that inhabit? I believe even to the magnitude of something nuclear. And that's what I want to challenge you and bring to your attention. You know, even the wine press that talks about the grapes. If you read in Revelation 19, verse 15, and I'll just read it to you, and out of his mouth goes a sharp sword. This is confirming of everything we've just been saying here. And with it, it should smite the nations, and he shall rule them with a rod of iron, and he treads the winepress of his fierceness and wrath of Yahuwah Sabaoth. I think that encapsulates absolutely everything that we are presenting to you right now. And you know, one of my favorite verses is for Shane and I is 2 Ezra or 4 Ezra chapter 9 verse 21, and it talks about the grape and the cluster. And again, that's appropriate to where we're going. And I saw and spared it greatly, and have kept me a grape of the cluster and a plant of a great people. There are 3 types of destinies. I'm not talking about everyone being saved, because I know that it's not that. You need to know, if you're going to be dressed in a white robe, you need to know what your destiny is. But here it's affirming 2 things. Let the multitude perish then, which was born in vain, and let my grape be kept and my plant, for with great labor have I made it perfect. So I just wanted to add that in, because in everything, and before this millennium kingdom, we can see worship and we can see his hand at work. Verse 31, a noise shall come even to the ends of the earth, for Yahuwah has a controversy with the nations. Excuse me. He will plead with all flesh. He will give them that are wicked to the sword, says Yahuwah. That's talking here about the wicked suffering, the suffering of the wicked, suffering through the sword. Again, the focus is war. Jeremiah 25, verse 33. And the slain of Yahuwah shall be that day from one end of the earth to the other end of the earth, and they shall not be lamented, neither gathered nor buried, but as dung upon the ground. I recall that same verse in Ezra coming out, speaking the very same thing. And here, what I want to bring out to you is that we are looking at nukes. It's talking about severity. Men who will be dragged out like dung in the streets, but also from one end of the earth to the other. That means from west to south, from north to east. These are the things that I want you to focus and bring out and challenge your attention. But you see, as all this happens in the dark, what happens in the dark? It will be revealed in the light. Why? Because the light is Yah, and the darkness is mystery Babylon, and Yah will reveal this, his light, and reveal to us this darkness. Yah's cup of wrath, one of those things is World War III, the sword that we've been reading about here, and the world will experience it. There is no escape from it. This is my part of the context that I want to present to you. Verse 37 of Jeremiah 25 says this, and the peaceable habitations are cut down because of the fierce anger of Yahuwah. Listen to that again. and the peaceable habitations are cut down because of the fierce anger of Yahuwah. What I want to say is this: unlike World War II, where there were neutral countries that did not get involved in the war, what this whole chapter, what these verses are saying, this time round, there are no neutral countries that will escape. This is all part of the wrath. This is all part of his hand. Yah is in control. So as I started, I want to finish by reminding, by bringing out, by drawing out, Babylon made all the nations of the earth sip from her cup, sipping from this cup of the scarlet woman. Yahuwah is going to make Babylon pay to sip from, by sipping from that cup. They will pay by sipping from his cup of wrath, a double portion of strength also. I leave that with you. I pray that it blesses you. I'm excited to delve deeper into this right now with Dr. Pidgeon. Welcome.
Hi, Jesse.
Forward to share. Welcome, Stephen.
It's good to be here. Thank you, Jesse.
It's always wonderful to have you. We always look excited with what you're going to impart, especially because this is an extension from Thursday and so reverberating on people's heart. They're just wanting to know more here.
Well, this prophecy in Jeremiah 25 is acutely accurate right now. And we're not months away from this happening. We're days or weeks, maybe at best, from this occurring. There is something interesting, and I'll just share it with people who live in Europe, that's happening right now that I think the Europeans should know. That there's been a large troop amassment that's taking place in both Poland and in Romania. And it includes American troops and a substantial body of American tanks and Bradley fighting machines. And this is, a large body of troops and fighting machines. And there is a place called Transnistria. Most people don't know about this place, but it is a thin borderline of territory between the nation of Moldova and the nation of Ukraine. Now, the Moldovans, this is a very interesting part of the world, Jesse. You have in Romania, you have people who speak a Latin form of language. It's not a Slavic language. To the south, you have the Bulgars, the Bulgarians, and you have the Serbs, who all speak of kind of a Slavic form of language. To the west, you have the Czechs, you have the Slovaks. They speak a Slavic kind of language. To the north, you have the Poles. They speak a Slavic form, and the Hungarians all speak a Slavic form of language. Moldova is kind of caught the crosshair, so they speak kind of a blended form. You have many Romanian-speaking nationals in Moldova, and you also have Slavic-speaking. Hi, Ipa. Hi, Corey. Shalom to you too. You have Slavic-speaking, and you also have Romanian-speaking languages. And in fact, the government in Moldova was recently controlled by virtually Romanian operatives, and the whole government has recently resigned because the government was becoming more or less a puppet of the United States in gearing up for what is going to be a massive invasion. Now, in Transnistria, the largest weapons depot in Europe is currently housed. There's a massive amount of old Soviet arms that have been kept in a huge warehouse. Massive. It's so massive that if Ukraine can capture this weapons depot, it will be able to survive to fight the war against the Russians for yet another year. The Transnistrians are Russian-speaking people along this borderline between Moldova and Ukraine who have declared separation a long time ago from Moldova because they're Russian-speaking and their allegiance is to Russia. Well, as I mentioned to you, there's a massive buildup of American troops and American arms in Romania and a massive buildup in Poland. There's also a buildup that is beginning to the northwestern side of Moldova by the Ukrainian troops. Now, what most Americans don't know, what most people in Europe don't know, because nobody covers it, The central battle of the war that has taken place between Russia and Ukraine was centered in a town called Bakhmut, or Artemovsk is the old Russian name, but the Ukrainian name is Bakhmut. And Bakhmut is more or less the Gettysburg. For the Americans watching this, will know that this battle is very important. It's the Gettysburg battle between Ukraine and Russia. And Russia is basically winning this war. They have completely surrounded Bakhmut as of yesterday. They estimate there are about 7,000 Ukrainian troops trapped there, and they're going to be slaughtered to the last man, is what will happen. So the Ukrainians have lost better than 20,000 troops in Bakhmut. And it is a battle that essentially, once they lose Bakhmut, they lose complete control of the Donetsk, Luhansk region. It's gone. That's their central pin in order to wage war there. And so they have pumped many, many troops into Bakhmut in order to try to hold on to this. Well, in losing Bakhmut, Emmanuel Macron, and Olaf Scholz out of Germany have told Zelensky that should they lose Bakhmut, that the Western support for the war is going to dry up. Remember, Ukraine isn't waging this war at all. They don't have any money to do any of this. All of this is being done on American dollars and American funding and American armament. And the American armament is all there to support the expansion of NATO with the idea of dismembering Russia in order to steal its natural resources. So, as you might imagine, Russia is resistant to this concept. So as a result, we're seeing a major battle that is about to hatch. This major battle that is about to hatch is going to be, and this is my opinion, okay? I'm not speaking from any military intelligence at all. I'm just speaking my opinion, all right? The United States, I believe, is going to launch a direct assault into Ukraine in order to directly confront Russian troops. And I think the pincer attack will come in from Poland and will come in through Moldova, out of Romania, through Moldova. So Wizz Air, which flies in and out of Chisinau, has terminated all flights as of yesterday into Chisinau. That's the capital of Moldova. What does this mean for everyone? Well, the attack, I think, is going to be looking like this. You're going to see Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania try to move on the northeastern front. You're going to see Poland moving into Ukraine. You're going to see Romania moving through Moldova, trying to capture the military base, the weapons depot in Transnistria, while Ukraine tries to launch an offensive from the northern side into Transnistria. This is going to cause a number of things to happen. Number one, Belarus is already planning on entering the war. And Belarus is going to move quickly, probably against the capital of Kyiv and also against Lviv in the western side. So this is what the invasion from Poland is going to try to do, is to try to secure Lviv from capture by the Belarusian troops. But the long and the short of this is, for all of us, this is an absolutely direct, in-your-face, nonstop, no going back war between NATO and Russia, period. There's no more beating around the bush and saying this is a war by proxy. This will be Britain, France, Germany, Italy, Poland, Romania, joined together in all of its forces against Russia. And China, as of last week, joined the fray, joining on behalf of Russia. So China is now moving a substantial body of its military assets from far western China into Ukraine, including massive amounts of artillery, suicide drones, and so forth. However, Russia has made it perfectly clear that they intend to use nuclear weapons and that they will use nuclear weapons outside of Ukraine, outside of the battlefield. They will strike other nations. So when you see this taking place, as you mentioned in the prophecy in Jeremiah, it's very clear that this is going to come to every nation on earth now. This is not going to miss it now. This is going to come to every nation on earth. And you can, as Mark says, putting hooks in their mouth. That's a very good way to put it. North Korea has essentially declared war on South Korea. I mean, that's what happened. That's happened 2 days ago. The United States moved a nuclear submarine into port in South Korea. Kim Jong-un has taken that as an act of war, and he is now at war with South Korea. So it's just a matter of when he launches. And of course, 3 days ago, they tested an ICBM capable of hitting the United States. The North Koreans did. We don't know how many nuclear weapons they have. We think upwards of 60. But I know for a certainty that Kim Jong-un has not just a fission weapon, but also a fusion weapon. They have a hydrogen weapon. And a hydrogen weapon they're extremely large and very, very dangerous. And they have a hydrogen weapon, probably something in the range of 90 kiloton. And I speak in terms of kilotons. I hear Steve Quayle always talking about megatons. Megaton is an overreach. The largest bomb ever set off was Arbama, which was, until the bomb went off in Tonga last April. But that was a 750 kiloton bomb. That was the largest nuclear weapon ever detonated, ever, by anyone, ever. Huge bomb. And the sound wave went around the Earth twice. It was felt in London. Yeah. And so now you see that, so what you're going to see is this is going to explode. It's going to explode in the South China Sea. It's going to explode in Korea. And it's going to explode all over Europe. It's going to be all over Europe. Now, the difficulty with this is that it would be nice if somebody could walk back and say, okay, we've gone far enough. But there isn't going to be any walking back, because as the prophecy that you laid out in Jeremiah 25 says, I'm going to pour out this cup of wrath and you're going to drink from it. Even if you try to say, I'm not going to drink from that. I'm not drinking from that cup. Yes, you are. You're going to drink from that cup of wrath because Yah is pouring it out. Now, I have to tell you, last night and the night before, we had the most spectacular northern lights up here in the West. Incredible. It was multicolored, beautiful, all over the sky. But the northern lights indicate that we've been hit with a substantial body of UV radiation from the sun. That's what it is. So, we've seen a huge increase in earthquake activity all over the world in the last 2 weeks. And we're going to see an even greater increase. There's going to be probably in the next 4 to 5, 7 days, we're going to see an even greater increase in major quakes all over the world. And this is because Yah is judging the world.
Yes. Yes.
Now, when we say Yah is judging the world, a lot of people say, well, that means Yah is mad and he's punishing the world. No, it doesn't mean that. What it means is that Yah is going to prevail over the world, not man. And if it means that he has to completely flood the earth with water, as he did at the time of Noah, in order that his plan would succeed and the wicked plans of men would fail, then that's what he's going to do. That's not what he's going to do this time. He's going to pour out a cup of wrath on all of the nations that decided that they would seduce their people by pharmakia. By sorcery, that they would deceive their people by sorcery, that the world leaders would engage in open genocide and democide against their own populations in order to, quote unquote, control the population.
Yes.
And now these warmongers, these greedy covenant breakers, have now pushed us into a situation that is irreversible. So when Putin addressed the Duma and actually the whole nation of Russia in a live broadcast on February 21st, he said, there is no turning back. Now, this is directly out of the prophecy, Jesse. It's directly out of the Jeremiah 25 prophecy.
That's right. Yeah.
What has happened now is that there is no turning back. And so now you can count on the Russians are going to be using nuclear weapons in the very near future, and they're going to use them against Western Europe and the United States. The nuclear weapons that will be used in Western Europe will most likely be what they call tactical nuclear weapons.
Right.
Now, a tactical nuclear weapon is a weapon that is somewhere between 75 and 150 kiloton. 150 kiloton is about 100 times more powerful than the bomb that destroyed Hiroshima.
Mm. We've gone up in time, so it would have had to develop, wouldn't it?
Oh, yeah. These are extremely sophisticated, very, very lethal weapons. So when you talk about a 150 kiloton weapon, if there was a 150 kiloton weapon that went off in downtown London, it would remove all of London. I mean, virtually all of London would be killed in the blast.
Mm.
You know, I mean, not to get too graphic, but I mean, just to give you an example, 150 kiloton weapon is going to create a 15-mile radius, 15-mile circular radius of a temperature zone that's going to reach
Yes.
over 10,000 degrees for a few seconds.
Yeah.
And it's going to be 10 times hotter than the sun, and everything in that 15-mile radius is going to melt. It's going to turn to green glass.
And there is a prophecy about the sun melting and burning people. I just read it today in line with Jeremiah. I can't remember what it is, but it's very prophetic of what you're saying.
Mm-hmm. And this is, and so when this happens, now from the 15-mile blast, now there's a 1,000-mile wind blowing off of that at 500 miles an hour that goes out another 35 miles. How much of London is encompassed? That's 150 kiloton blast.
Mm.
When you're talking about the major NATO bases in Poland and Romania and Germany and Italy and in Brussels or in Belgium and in France and even in Britain, Vladimir Putin has already targeted and already has missiles prepared to launch against 300 NATO targets, all in the 75 kiloton range.
Yeah. Mm.
Now, all of this takes place. We're talking about in less than 10 minutes, Jesse.
Mm.
In less than 10 minutes, all of these sites in Europe are up in flames and have been completely destroyed and eviscerated. For the United States, on the other hand, there is what's planned is strategic nuclear weapons. Mm-hmm. Now, the Chinese have demonstrated 2 days ago a satellite system that they used over Hawaii. They demonstrated it actually a month ago over Hawaii.
Yeah.
But this is a satellite system that is full of lasers. And what these satellites do is they blind anti-missile defense systems in the United States. So when the time comes to launch, these satellites are just going to go poop, and everything's going to be blind in the U.S., and then in come these missiles. So whatever anti-defense missile system we have in the United States, it's going to be completely blinded. And believe me, the Chinese and Russians know exactly what they are.
Yeah.
So when you talk about a strategic nuclear weapon, this is an entirely different idea. Strategic nuclear weapon, for instance, the Sarmat-2, delivers 15 150 kiloton nuclear warheads into a target area.
Mm. Yeah.
Now, if you can imagine that being sent over, you already heard me describe what would happen to London with one 150 kiloton blast.
Mm.
Think about 15 targets, Jesse. What is that? Canterbury, London, Birmingham, Manchester, Liverpool, Leeds, York, Edinburgh,
Manchester, Scotland, everywhere, really.
Manchester, Glasgow. Right? We haven't hit 15 yet. We haven't hit 15.
Yeah. It's sad, isn't it? Because in considering this prophecy, I got to realize, hey, maybe so many people, because they're exposed to wars where in the past it's just been centralized countries, this World War III will be different. It is every nation in that way. And so can you imagine how many nukes are going off, the veracity of those, the air that will be polluted afterwards, the suffering? There is no getting away from it. And that's why it was important to focus on this, to see. And you were mentioning about, before Stuart's brought up the scripture, Revelation 16:8, and the fourth angel poured out of his vial upon the sun, and power was given unto him to scorch men with fire. You were talking about the scorching and the burning, and that's the scripture that had come to mind when you said that. But I don't think I absolutely considered a global level of world war at this level until I really looked deeply in examining this to see the devastation and what it means by everyone being affected. No escape, no choice, no neutrality.
Yeah, and if you recall the passage that Jeremiah talks about, he says, bodies will be laying on the ground like dung. and there
Yes,
will
and
be
that's an
no peace
Ezra
with
too, or yeah. Is that Ezra also, or
That's also Ezra, yeah, fourth
Ezra?
Ezra, yeah.
Right.
And so we see the kind of destructive power that's coming. Now, I would like to be able to come to these people and say, "Hey, let's sit down. Let's do like Isaiah says. Let's sit down and reason together." Right? As Isaiah says in Isaiah 1, let's sit down and reason together. Let's stop this nonsense. But there is no reasoning with people who are completely infested with Satan, right? These people who have been completely indwelled with demons, there's no reasoning with them. There's no
Mm.
reasoning with a computer that doesn't care about humanity at all and is the one making the decisions, right?
Yeah.
When a computer says, "Well, how do we increase profits for the military industrial complex?" Well, let's have a war. Well, what about the human beings that are going to be lost? Well, you never asked me to consider that. You only asked me to consider profit.
Mm.
You see?
Yeah.
And so this is why when we talk about coming out of Babylon, we have to talk about we've got to talk about the sophistication level that is involved, because of course spiritually one has to come out of Babylon. Now,
Yeah.
when we talk about spiritually coming out of Babylon, this can be done whether or not you leave physically or not. Spiritually, you have to do it.
Yes.
And you may say to yourself, "Well, why do I want to do that?" Well, you want to do that because you want to be part of the remnant. You want to be part of not for even purposes of surviving, right?
Yeah.
It's not even for purposes of surviving. It's for purposes of obeying Yah and being
Absolutely.
part of his people.
Critical.
And so if we're part of his people and the world gets destroyed, well, so what? I'm going to be spending my time with Mashiach. I'm not going to be spending it here. And,
Yeah.
and so this whole thing here, this ridiculous configuration we have going on Earth right now, people jockeying over something that is immaterial. I need to have control over all carnality, right? Well, good for you.
Mm.
It's just it's always boggled my mind about the mindset of people. It's like I can remember being in the back in the days when I used to be in the Christian church. People would cut other people's throat in order to have 15 minutes of fame on the worship stage.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm
Yeah.
going to stab you in the back, kill your children, burn your house down, so I can be famous for 15 minutes in this little tiny church. Really? Is there any consideration for anything else at all?
Mm.
And it's the same thing, even when you're talking about world control. I'm going to control the world. And the point being what? After you control the world and you proclaim yourself God, you know what happens to you? You're dead. Julius Caesar is dead. Augustus Caesar is dead. Genghis Khan is dead. King James the First is dead. Queen Elizabeth the First is dead. Queen Elizabeth II is dead. World leaders die because death comes to us all. So what are
Yeah.
you talking about? You
Yeah.
think you control something, that control means nothing. The world belongs to Yah, not to you. Why are you refusing to give him credit for the creation?
That's right.
Because you're in rebellion. That's why. Because you're in rebellion, you're going to lift up yourself.
Mm.
Okay.
Yeah. Even one of your points, one of your slides from last week's teaching, it just touched on it slightly, but you were talking about the false prophets. And it was pointed out, look at these false prophets, the way that they make these false gods. They will mold, they will melt away, they're seasonal. They can't give you the answer to prayer. They can't carry that anointing. It just reminded me, because you said false prophets, speaking about Jeremiah and having to recognize what it is to worship, what it is to be set apart, and what it is to actually know Yah. So I just wanted to bring those points into this as you continue.
Yeah, it's so true. And people who lift up, and of course, we talked about this on Radio Free Alaska yesterday, talking about the idea of asserting other Elohim to control your life.
Mm.
Thou shalt have no other Elohim before me. Well, we took a vote on that, and democracy is above you. We took a vote on that, and my religion is above you. We took a vote on that. My synagogue is above you. We took a vote on that. My pastor's opinion is superior to you.
Yeah.
We took a vote on that, and we have decided that this God, it competes with you, and that God competes with you. Let us lift up, Confucius. Let us lift up Buddha. Let us lift up, whoever, Ellen White. But we're going to lift up somebody that is going to be superior to Yahweh. Well,
Yeah.
okay, if you're doing that, then you have breached the first commandment. And so, yes, to give your ruach and all praise to Yahweh. This is so true here, Mike and Mark. And this is what really the case is, that when we talk about putting your life over into the remnant and coming out of Babylon, right? This is not an endeavor. Okay, I'm going to shut the book on Babylon today. Click. There, I'm out of Babylon. It doesn't work that way, because we're in Babylon up to our eyeballs with the currency we use, with the credit cards we use, with the accounts we have, with the contracts we're in, with the mortgage we pay. We're up to our eyeballs in Babylon. Well, spiritually, how can you come out of Babylon? Well, the first thing you have to recognize is that there is no king other than Yah.
Mm.
There is no judge other than Yah, and there is no lawmaker other than Yah. And anybody who comes to you and says, I'm going to be making the laws here because I got elected to Congress. The question for me is, are you in obeisance to Yah, yes or no? And if you're not, then you're not making laws. You're
That's
making junk. You're making garbage.
Yeah.
You're putting together a bunch of stuff that has no validity whatsoever. It's your opinion about the way. So when you have somebody in Britain saying, we've decided that the Bible is offensive speech. Oh, really? Predicated upon which Elohim are you worshiping that the Bible is offensive speech? Oh, that's right. I forgot. You're completely controlled by Masons who worship the Baphomet.
Yeah.
Right? Transgendered, half man, half goat, half woman, half man, right? Whose generative function is expressed in the caduceus. 2 serpents. Well, congratulations. There's your God. Worship your God. Worship your Baphomet. And recognize that the result of your worship of the Baphomet will be you lying like dung on the ground with no one to bury you.
That's right. Yeah.
So in coming out of Babylon, we come out of Babylon spiritually first. We come out of Babylon spiritually. And we come out of Babylon by what? Seeking ye shall find. Knock, and it shall be open unto you. Ask, ye shall receive. So we start there. You will seek him and you will find him when you seek him with all of your heart.
Yeah.
So you must seek with all. You can't be halfway into this. You have to seek him with all of your heart. And you're seeking what? You're seeking truth. This is why I know that people who said in their own heart, I am going to seek the truth no matter what. Even if they're atheists, they will find Yah because Yah is the truth. What did Mashiach say? I am the way, the truth, and the life. And so if you're seeking truth, you're going to find the truth. And when you seek the truth and you find the truth, then he must become your all in all, your everything. He is your king. He is your judge. He is your lawmaker. And so all things that belong to him then belong to you. You become part of the body of Mashiach. You become a stone of the temple made without hands.
Yeah. Beautiful.
You're part of the New Jerusalem. You know, this is what you become. And so as you become this now, you leave the trappings of, gee, I'm the subject of the crown. Gee, I'm involved in this group. Gee, I'm a member of this secret society. Gee, I've got this rank and privilege. Gee, I've got this, that, and the other thing. You have to leave all of that. You got to leave all that behind.
Yeah.
Leave that behind and become free. And what I mean by, what does Mashiach say? When the Son of Man sets you free, you shall be free indeed. And this freedom indeed is to be a person on the face of the earth. You're a person on the face of the earth. There's no nationalism in you. There's no politics in you. You don't define yourself as a member of the Labor Party or the member of the right wing or the member of this, that, or the other thing. You are a child of Yah. You are a child of Yah who has the promise of being Ben Elohim, Beni Elohim. This is 1 John 3. 1 John 3. You will become Beni Elohim. You will become the sons of Elohim. This is the promise given to you in recognizing that the word was made flesh and tabernacled among us. if you can recognize that Yah himself was made flesh and tabernacled among us, and that this tabernacling among us was to completely reconcile mankind to the kingdom.
Mm.
Complete reconciliation. There's nothing more to be done. There's no lamb to be slaughtered. There's no new steps that have to be taken to crush the serpent's head. The serpent's head was crushed at Golgotha.
Mm.
That's what happened. Here we go. Yeah, 1 John 3. See, behold what manner of love the Father has bestowed upon us. What? That we should be called the Beni Elohim. That we should be called the sons of Elohim. Therefore, the world knows us not because it knew him not. Beloved, now we are the sons of Elohim, and it does not yet appear what we shall be, which is what? In a glorified body. But we know that when he shall appear, we shall be like him, because we saw him as he was, in a glorified body. We saw him after he was crucified on the cross to death, that he rose from the grave in a glorified body. And in the glorified body, evidencing the scars in his hand, evidencing the scar in his chest, evidencing the scars on his feet, nonetheless sat down and ate fish and bread with the Talmudim. He did it in a glorified body that if you look at Job 1:6, you'll see that the Beni Elohim that preceded Adam and Hua in this earth, they also had a capability that Adam and Hua did not have, because Adam and Hua, Adam and Eve, were placed in a garden. They were placed in a garden. But the Beni Elohim, on the other hand, were walking to and fro and back and forth on the earth. So that's what it says, Job 1:6. Now there was a day when the Beni Elohim, the sons of Elohim, came to present themselves before Yahweh. How did they present themselves before Yahweh? Because they were capable of being both on earth and in heaven. So they were able to present themselves before Yah. And Hasatan, the adversary, was also among them. And Yahweh said unto Hasatan, from whence come you? And Hasatan said, well, I'm with these guys, right? He said, from going to and fro in the earth and from walking up and down on it.
Yes.
So you see, the Beni Elohim in the glorified body have the capability of being here on earth and in heaven, of being able to present themselves before Yahweh and be able to go to and fro and walk up and down upon the earth. This is what it means to be Beni Elohim, the sons of Elohim. And it is given unto us to be the sons of Elohim because of the work of Mashiach, who reconciled us in a complete propitiation to the Father. Now, this is where we want to be. We don't, and it doesn't matter if a nuclear war comes, not to us, it doesn't. Does it matter if all of the world is going to be destroyed? Not to us. Does it matter? It does not matter, because the fact is, what matters is Yah's kingdom. Yah's kingdom, may it come here on the earth as it is in heaven.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And what was so wonderful with all that you said, we are stones of the temple, not made by hands. You just put that into everything that you said there. It is such a blessing. It strengthens you. It equips us. You know, the sons of Elohim. Wow. Thank you, Stephen, because that is critical, what you have just said in this last 5 minutes.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing too. You know, when you talk about walking with Yah, you know, Yah gives us instruction, and his instruction is what? Life. His instruction is life. Other Elohim, when you raise up other Elohim, their instruction is always death. It's never life, because they're false Elohim. And so what they ultimately conclude is death. Like, give you an example. Yah says what? Here is my covenant, the 10 Devarim. I've given you these 10 commandments, and in Deuteronomy 5:22, he added nothing. He wrote these out with his own fingertip on sapphire stones, and he added nothing further. And he says what? Do these and live in them. But the government, which holds itself out as God, right, which, by the way, is the definition of fascism. The government holds itself out as God. Oh, we're making the rules around here. We're the ultimate sovereign. Sovereign is another word for we're your God, not Yah. We're your God, right? Here we go. Deuteronomy 5:22. These words Yahweh spoke unto all your assembly in the mount out of the midst of the fire, of the cloud, and of the thick darkness with a great voice. And he added no more. And he wrote them on 2 sapphire stones and delivered them unto me. So you see that when Yah does this, he says, do these and live in them. But your government says to you, do these or we're going to kill you. Now, you may say, oh, wait a minute. The government doesn't say do these or we're going to kill you. Oh, yeah? What happens when the government says, thou shalt drive 35 and you drive 50 and you keep doing it? Then what happens? Well, a guy shows up at your window. Hey, get out of the car. I want to talk to you. You can't talk to me. I don't want to talk to you. Oh, yeah, you're going to talk to me. Oh, no, I'm not. I'm going to keep driving. The next thing you know, you got 3 guys with guns. Get out of the car. Or what? We're going to shoot you. Get out of the car, and then we're going to shoot you. And if you don't agree to us shooting you, then, or if you don't agree to us at this point, we might, in lieu of shooting you initially, just put you into this concrete room where you can spend the rest of your life. Right?
Yeah, it is.
No matter how you point at it, the government's response is do what we tell you to do, or ultimately we will use force to make you do it. We will kill you. We will behead you. We will hang you. We will burn you. We will fry you. We will electrocute you. We will gas you. But you're going to do what we do, what we tell you to do, because our God is death. But Yah is life, and his covenant is life. Follow his covenant and live. And there's nothing that is upsetting about his covenant. No government, well, until now, has made his covenant illegal. But now the governments are, you shall not have Yahweh before us. You shall not. You shall not refuse to worship our idols. You shall not refuse to worship our Baphomet. You shall not refuse to worship our transgendered idol. You shall not refuse to worship our LGBTQ flag. You shall not fail to worship our national healthcare system. You shall not fail to worship our education system. And most importantly, you shall not fail to worship our currency, which has the engraved leaders of our gods on the currency. See the face? See?
Very good.
Here's your God. Here's your goddess right here. There's their face. Well, what about the Sabbath? No, you shall not take the Sabbath. We will tell you what days you will take off and which days you will work. You shall, and one of them will not be the Sabbath. You shall not honor your mother and your father, because the state is your mother and your father, not your mother and your father. Your mother and your father are idiots, and they're racists, and they're homophobes, and they're misogynists. And they've got all these biases and bigots and prejudices, and they're irrational, and they're stupid, and they're not intellectual. We have the answers. That's why it's important for you to consider your transgendered plan in first grade. That's why it's important for you to know every sexually deviant practice there is in third grade.
It's quite ridiculous, Stephen, because I was thinking of this as you were speaking. You hear it from the hireling shepherds. They will say to you that your governments, not just one government here, has been elected by Yah, that they, the eldership, have been elected by Yah. But really, they get what the people have in their hearts, what they vote for. That's what it is, and that's the distinguish with everything that you say. You go by Yah's precepts, not by man's, not by what they're saying. And that's important, because so many people hold up to this hocus pocus. Oh, they're elected of Yah, they're elected of God. Not so. And that's why we are in the devastation and the travesty that we are in. And that's where we have to have that navigation by the 10 Devarim. Live by that law, where you get these people saying you're not under the law, but that is your navigation. That is how you come out of Babylon. That is how you make that distinguishing mark and that separation.
True. Can you, by any chance, put up some of the slides from the
of course,
the PowerPoint? I'll be right back.
You just tell me what page. Okay. Let me, while Stephen is going away and coming back, I want to read to you. This is the rest of Jeremiah 25, verses 34 to 38. Howl, ye shepherds, and cry, and wallow yourselves in the ashes, ye principals of the flock. For the days of your slaughter, that's key, and of your dispersions are accomplished, and ye shall fall like a pleasant vessel. And the shepherds shall have no way to flee, nor the principals or the flocks to escape. A voice of the cry of the shepherds and a howling of the principals of the flock shall be heard. For Yahuwah has spoiled their pastures. Yahuwah has spoiled their pastures. And the peaceable habitations are cut down because of the fierce anger of Yahuwah. There's his wrath that we've been speaking in this whole program. He has forsaken his covenant as the lion. Remember that roar we spoke of from his holy place, his indignation. For their land is desolate because of the fierceness of the oppressor, the winepress. Remember everything that we've spoken, and because of his fierce anger. Wow, that is actually really, really powerful to see how Yahuwah speaks, how he moves, how he cultivates his wrath, his power, his hand in these times. Let me bring that slide back, Stephen. Where would you like me to go? Which page?
Yeah, you can just sort down. You can see, though, Jesse, that here, for Ezra 15. Now, for Ezra 15, this path, for Ezra 15 is a very difficult chapter. But it is, both 15 and 16 are well worth the read.
Yeah.
Because you can see here, in fact, let me start just a second, Jesse, with for Ezra 15, verse 1. Because this is something that, again, you would think that somebody would listen, but I mean, of course, the irreverent, the impious, they don't want to hear it at all. Behold, speak in the ears of my people the words of prophecy, which I will put in your mouth, says Yahweh, right? And cause them to be written in a paper, for they are faithful and true. Fear not the imaginations against you. Let not the incredulity of them trouble you that speak against you. For all the unfaithful shall die in their unfaithfulness. Now, I tell you, I need to hear these words today, quite frankly. See, you know what I've been going through, and it's good to hear this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now we see verse 5. Behold, says Yahweh, I will bring plagues upon the world, the sword, famine, death, destruction. For wickedness has exceedingly polluted the whole earth, and their hurtful works are fulfilled. Now, we have seen, in 2020, we saw wickedness rise over the whole earth.
Yes.
In the form of the pandemic. Okay. When we got into 2021, we rose into a pandemic. We rose into wickedness all over the world. Now, when this wickedness came in all over the world, you can see that this wickedness brought with it the beginning of the sword, famine, death, and destruction. No one wants to talk about it, but here it is. Yes. But look at the wickedness that's on earth. When the machinery is such that infants can be aborted and their bodies trafficked. And I'm not going to get into it because it's too gross to even begin to speak about it, what they do, the kinds of things that are done by these murderers that call themselves doctors, right? They're murderers. And the doctors were engaged in murder all over the world during the pandemic. Oh, we can make $130,000 if this person is put on a ventilator and is declared to have died from COVID. What'd they come in here for? Oh, that person had a hangnail that was infected. Give them a COVID test. And the next thing you know, they're on a ventilator and dead.
That's
What's
right.
a ventilator, you say? Well, we just take a vacuum cleaner, take the bottom part of the vacuum cleaner off the hose, shove the plastic part down your throat, and reverse the air. There, you're ventilated.
Yes.
And so here you see, now when you see these judgments here that are being given to us, this is the direct result of wickedness all over the world. And when we talk about this, what's going on in Russia right now, Russia has become resistant to the 18 different sexual orientations,
Really.
the 73 different kinds of genders that are being claimed.
Mm.
LGBTQ flag, which really is the sovereign flag of what? This is the sovereign flag of atheist Talmudism. That's what it is. And it has been raised over the nation state of every Western nation, that flag.
And
Who
even
can-
at the point of in the church windows, you see it. Church steps, you see that flag, the colors.
Yeah. Do they know what it means? No
They
idea.
do.
They don't know what sovereign does that flag represent? It doesn't surprise me it would be at a church, because obviously it's going to be part of the fertility goddess, right? Libertas, Ishtar. Well, why not? We have a fertility goddess festival once a year in every Christian church called Easter. Let's put out the eggs. Let's put out the bunny rabbits in significance and worship of the fertility aspects of the festival. Right? You know how many evangelical and Protestant churches have Easter egg hunts on their
Yeah.
property?
Absolutely. Yeah. Every
Right?
pagan.
I mean, I was in San Antonio. I saw John Hagee's church. He was advertising that they were going to put out 30,000 eggs this year.
Seriously.
Seriously. Right? Well, if you're going to worship the fertility goddess, is it any surprise that you would fail to take on her customs? The fertility goddess, Libertas, Ishtar, was, her temples consisted of male and female prostitutes.
Yeah. That's right. You've got a slide here on that, haven't you? Shall I find it as you continue?
Yeah. If you continue down, you'll see the pictures of Libertas.
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. This is the Colossus of Rhodes. And the Colossus of Rhodes, you can see, this was supposed to depict the sun god Helios. And this is what the crown is on his head. It's the radiance of the sun coming off his head. That's what the crown is, right?
Yeah.
And then you see the torch of liberty, right? The torch of liberty and the rays of the sun behind his head. Now let's keep going. Now here we go. You see that this is on the left, the far left, is a statue of Isis or Ishtar. And again, the radiances of the sun behind the head of Ishtar. And you can see the equivalent here in the Statue of Liberty, the radiances of the sun behind the head of Libertas, and the torch of the Colossus of Rhodes in the right hand, or the torch in the hands of Isis here, the standing statue next to Libertas. You see, Libertas and Ishtar are the same persona.
Yes. Yeah.
Now, we can spell it Ishtar all we want, but you can pronounce it Easter if you want.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I just got that. Yeah.
You can see it pretty clearly.
Yeah, you can. She represented the goddess of freedom, didn't she? So even the slaves clung on to her so that they could believe that their victory would come through her. She was a goddess of prostitution, that you said, is that right? And so they hang on to that too, also to justify their poverty and their ways that they would be delivered.
Well, it's one thing to say, I want to be delivered from slavery. Okay, I want freedom to be delivered from slavery. I want to be delivered from tyranny. I want to be delivered from an oppressive regime that controls my life, that completely restricts my ability to self-determine what I'm going to do in life. I want to be free from that. That's one thing. It's another thing to say, I want sexual license to do whatever I want to do,
Yeah.
which is what Libertas promised, right? Because Ishtar was a fertility goddess. And so this was a promise of sexual license. And in fact, the worship was to come and have sex with a temple prostitute. That was the worship of Isis, right?
Yeah.
So it's adultery, it's fornication, and it's whatever else that came after. And as Victoria says, they roast a big fat swine after the egg hunt. Yeah, that's correct. And you know why they would cook the pig after the egg hunt? Because it was a pig, that had killed Tammuz, the son of Ishtar. So the women were weeping for Tammuz. And so therefore, we killed the boar that killed Tammuz. Let's have a ham. This is why ham was always the chosen meal after Easter.
Astonishing. Wow. Just to get these little crevices into place, it really fits the jigsaw.
Yeah. And then you see what takes place, right? You see what takes place. Now, this is why it doesn't surprise me that the Christian church would readily embrace a flag that signifies at least 6 different kinds of fornication. And that's what the flag signifies, 6 different kinds of fornication. And so as a consequence, who's controlling that flag? Well, it is the Talmud that gives us 18 different kinds of sexual orientation. The Talmud does. They have particular Hebrew names for this kind of person, that kind of person, the other kind of person, all identified in the Talmud. And of the Jewish jurist, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, is the one who wrote the decision legalizing same-sex marriage in the United States, codifying it. And what you see there is that when she did this, she came out and said, okay, the LGBTQ, that is the initial set of sexual orientation. But there are at least 7 other sexual orientations that are also decriminalized under this decision. So let me ask you, which? What are the other 7 sexual orientations that were decriminalized under that statute?
Can you imagine?
We know now that they're trying to make pedophilia regular. In fact, Vicarious Filio Dei, the Pope, came out and said that pedophiles have a special place in heaven. He said that last week.
How many times have we heard different people from the Vatican, the Catholic Church, say the same evil thing?
Well, this is part of the reason why I want to speak to the Catholics that are here listening to this. I have a lot of respect for this Cardinal Vigano. He strikes me as somebody who has a true faith. It's not a completely unearthed faith. It's not a complete a faith that understands the name and has had the Sabbath revealed to him. But he is seeking a true faith. And Vigano knows for a fact that Jorge Bergoglio is completely in apostasy. It's 100% apostasy. But for those Catholics that are living in Ireland, for instance, you quit taking your kids to church because you got tired of the priests molesting them, and you're not going to allow your girls in the convent for a similar reason. And yet you continue to hold yourself out in Catholicism. But I can tell you, look, to the Irish, it's neither green nor is it orange. It's neither. The true faith is something outside of that. It was the true faith that was practiced on that island before Patrick arrived. And it had been practiced for 1,000 years before Patrick arrived. In fact, almost 1,500 years before Patrick arrived. The true faith. And the Irish seem to find their way back to it. And it's the same thing with the Protestants in Britain. You say, well, I'm going to follow Anglicanism. Anglicanism that replaces the Pope with the King or the Queen. Now you have a head of the Anglican Church, which Charles III just took over as the head of the Anglican Church, and he's a self-confessed Muslim.
Multi-faith. Yeah.
So when we talk about, let's talk about coming out of Babylon here for a second, Jesse. When you're going to come out of Babylon, can you come out? Can you remain in a religion that is based on Nicolaitanism? You know, with the clergy and you being the laity, and it does not respect the Shabbat. It does not keep the 10 Commandments. They're preaching you at the door that all of that stuff got nailed to the cross. That the true command of the Christian church is do what thou wilt. You know, I get criticized for the work we did in the Cepher. Luther was, took a scalpel to the New Testament.
Yeah.
What did he call the book of James? This is garbage. I wouldn't even burn it in my wood stove. You know, he wanted James gone. He wanted Peter gone. He wanted Jude gone. He wanted Revelations gone. You know, this is our friend Martin Luther. And he is revered with his own religion throughout Germany and Norway and Sweden, Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia, and Poland, and so forth, right?
Yeah.
And the Anglican Church, which is now governed by two things: a Muslim chief and a Masonic priest order. Who is your God?
That's right. So true.
So when we talk about coming out of Babylon, you also have to come out of the trappings of Babylon. Now, if you recall, Babylon ultimately conquered under Nebuchadnezzar. Babylon conquered Egypt, and Babylon and Egypt were merged. They were merged together. So the pantheon of Egyptian gods, Isis, Horus, Seth, merged with the pantheon of Babylon gods, Ishtar, Nimrod, Tammuz, or Ishtar, Mithras, Tammuz, or Ishtar, Ninus, Tammuz. These gods all came together into the same thing. You see, you want to talk about the Holy Trinity? Who's the Holy Trinity? Right? It's the mother and infant and Osiris. Right? And so when you see this, I'm sorry, I'm just getting upset right now. When you see it, you can see Egypt everywhere, right? When you see the obelisk, you see the dominion of Egypt. When you see the LGBT flag, you see the dominion of Zionism, Talmudism. Okay? These things are very obvious. When you see the cupola and the obelisk joined together in the same area, you see the dominion of Rome, which is the sect of the serpent in the hands of the house of Esau.
Wow.
Libertas, right? She was a priestess who was what? Many women who gained their freedom turned to prostitution and retained Libertas as their goddess, especially if they became priestesses in the Libertas cult. Although I can tell you that when you talk about the temple of Apollo that was at Corinth, of the 1,000 prostitutes working at that temple, which was a meat slaughtering plant that smelled like animal blood 100% of the time, 700 of the 1,000 were male prostitutes, and the women prostitutes working there would shave their head to look like males. That's why Paul said, if you're going to come in here into the church and you have a shaved head, you need to cover your head so you're not obscene when you pray and prophesize, right? If you've repented from your prostitution, cover your head, right? It was a very important part. I mean, so this is some of the things that, it would be, it would just be great if people understood where is Babylon. Now, I'm going to say this too while we're here. When Russia is out here fighting, Russia is fighting for a number of things. Number one, they refused to have a gay parade in St. Petersburg or Moscow. They wouldn't allow it. The West found that intolerable. They wouldn't allow the central banks that are controlled by the Zionist lobby to take over their banking controls. That's intolerable. Therefore, the central banks, which have admitted, by the way, that if they lose Ukraine, the whole Western financial system collapses, because the Western financial system is a complete fraud. It doesn't exist on anything except we tell you that this piece of paper can be transacted for food and for gas and for utilities.
Mm.
This piece of paper with our picture on it, that can be transacted. This is what they call legal tender. It's a total fraud.
Yeah.
It's fiat currency, it's paper currency, it's a complete fraud. And they know that if Russia and China resist it and do like what they're doing right now, which is to transact in gold and commodities, that their currency is going to completely collapse. They've admitted this. They admitted it this week. If we lose Ukraine, we lose the entire Western economic system. This is why they're willing to dump anything and everything into Ukraine and risk nuclear war, because it's all or nothing. This is an existential threat to the West. And it is perceived by Russia as an existential threat to Russia. If Russia loses, it doesn't exist anymore. If the West loses, it doesn't exist anymore. Therefore, war is a certainty, and its escalation to the ultimate use of the ultimate weapons is a certainty.
Yeah.
Okay. So when you talk about that, who is at the head, who sits at the head of what we call the West? Well, the Western world is dominated by three cities: the Vatican, the City of London, and Washington, D.C. In all three places, there is a cupola and an obelisk. The Vatican is the spiritual head, the City of London, the financial head,
Excellent.
and Washington, D.C., the military head.
Just repeat that again, Stephen.
Sure. You have three cities that control the West: the Vatican, which is an independent nation state inside of Italy; the City of London, which is an independent nation state inside England; and Washington, D.C., which is an independent nation state inside the United States. All three are marked by a cupola and obelisk.
Yeah.
Cupola represents the womb of Ishtar. The obelisk represents the phallus of Nimrod. Okay?
Yeah.
And these three entities are controlled by a group of families, the 13 families,
Yeah.
that control both the Black Pope and the White Pope, the head of the Jesuit order and the head of the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church is the entity which controls Europe, so that the military machine in Europe that we call NATO is the fighting machine for the Vatican. The Vatican's empire has always been called the Roman Empire. The Roman Empire, which existed from the time of Augustus Caesar until its collapse, was rebirthed as the second Holy Roman Empire under Charlemagne in 800 AD. And it reigned for 1,000 years over the continent until Napoleon took it down. And it was recreated under Adolf Hitler as the third Holy Roman Empire, the Third Reich. And the Third Reich, even though it supposedly lost the war, is in complete control of the European continent and is in control of Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and the United States, dictating the terms as to what is going to happen with this war confrontation in Ukraine between who? The Western Roman Church and the Eastern Orthodox Church. When people say this was all caused by Barack Obama's coup d'etat in Ukraine in 2014, yes, that was the casus belli that started this war. But this fire was fueled with the Laudato Si that was written by Jorge Bergoglio as the Pope in April of 2015, exalting a new God, the God of climate change, Gaia, exalting a new religion, and asserting justification for the recreation of the Third Reich. Now, you don't see it as the Third Reich because the swastika has been replaced with the yellow and blue flag of Ukraine. But I can tell you, you see that yellow and blue flag even over churches in England. You see it. I saw it over a church in England and Scotland. I saw it. The yellow and blue is the modern swastika. Well, why aren't we seeing the swastika? Why aren't we seeing the black and the red and the white like we saw under Germany? Because the Third Reich was the thing that was and is not, yet is. It was the Third Reich. It supposedly lost the war and is now for is not, and yet it is. It is to the point that when Olaf Scholz in Germany decides to send tanks to Ukraine, he sends 88, HH, Heil Hitler. Hello, wake up and smell the schnapps. This is the rise of the Reich. Again, the Reich is in control. And when you see people like, when you see Volodymyr Zelensky, the naked comedian, show up, looking like his junior Fidel Castro image that he likes to portray in the U.S. Congress wearing green fatigues like he's ever spent so much as 1 second in battle. He shows up in D.C. in his green fatigues, and somebody in Congress yells, "Glory to Ukraine," and he responds with a Zig Heil, "Glory to the heroes." They Zig Heiled in the U.S. Congress. You understand that? They Zig Heiled in the U.S. Congress. You know who the only two people in the EU that have stood up against this nonsense are 2 MEPs from Ireland. One of whom, the woman stood up and said, "Let me tell you something. You people who are opposed to peace talks, you people who are opposed to negotiations, you people are opposed to ending the war through diplomacy. There is no glory in the grave."
Wow.
She said it exactly. And there is no glory in the grave. So here we see, when we talk about this, I know we only have a few minutes left. I want to just kind of wrap this up.
It's good.
Babylon was recreated by Constantine. He mixed Babylon into a gigantic melting pot that he called Christianity. Christos. Under the Kiro, his symbol. And he merged this and to do the same thing that Rome had been doing up to that point, which is to bring in all world religions into a coexistence, if you will. Let's all just coexist. All you people who love Jupiter can get along with those people who love Mars and Apollo and Athena and so on and so forth. We shouldn't have any problem with each other. Poseidon. Let's just all just kind of enjoy each other's gods. And then Constantine mixed them all in a hodgepodge and said, "Here you go. Here's the singular religion that includes this guy at front." And originally they were talking about, well, shall we go with Hare Krishna instead of Jesus Christ? I said, if Jesus Christos, shall we go with Hare Krishna? They elected to go with Ie Zeus, which has been modified in the literature to say, not Zeus, Zeus. Not Ie Zeus, Ie Zeus. Not Zeus, Zeus, Ie Zeus. But there is an admission that it was Ie Zeus initially, because if you read in the King James, you see Elijah identified as Eli Zeus in the New Testament.
Yeah.
Okay. So they elected to go with this in order to merge the worship of Zeus into this new religion. And they had to do it in order to capture the movement, which was the movement that was birthed really in Britain, the disciples with Joseph of Arimathea, who had completely gone into the house of Brand the Blessed and Caradoc and Lucius and all of this crowd. And they brought with them an intellectualism and a strength to the faith, and they couldn't deal with it in Rome. So Constantine buried it. And he buried it by taking it in and defining it under his terms. Well, here we are. That is Babylon.
Really?
So to come out of Babylon, what's it take to come out of Babylon? Well, the mark of Yahweh's people is Shabbat. This is the mark of Yah's people. It's Shabbat. Are you a keeper of Shabbat? If you are, then you have been sealed by Yah. If you aren't, then you haven't. Now, what about belief in Mashiach? Well, of course, belief in Mashiach is what presents you the Ruach HaKodesh to understand the renewed covenant. Because while your church tells you, oh, you're not under the law, except the tithe, you're under that law. But other than that law, you're not under the law. Well, the fact is, you don't be under the law. I'm under the 10 Commandments, so I will tell you that right now. I'm under the 10 Commandments. I claim that. I'm under the 10 Commandments. The 10 Commandments apply to me.
Very
And I
bold.
seek to honor them and respect them the best I can, because from the 10 Commandments spring all human rights. I have a right to life because Yah said, thou shalt not kill. I have a right to property because Yah said, thou shalt not steal. I have a right to liberty because Yah said, you shall guard my Shabbat. You shall not bow down to idols. You shall honor your mother and your father. Right? You shall have no other Elohim before me. These are the fundamental tenets of liberty.
Yes. Absolutely. The weapons of the set apart new man are not carnal but mighty through Yahuwah, anointing Messiah to the pulling down of strongholds. So one must know what is holding the captives. Wonderful,
Amen.
David.
Amen, David. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for that word, brother. Yeah. And so there we are. There we are, Jesse. So here we are. This is, when we talk about come out of Babylon, seek and you shall find. You have to think about what strings are tying you to Babylon. First of all, contemplate the spiritual ties to Babylon. Okay. Are you still tied to Sunday worship? Well, if you are, that is anathema. If you read the gospel in Luke 4, you'll see that Mashiach went to the synagogue to read, as was his custom, because he kept the Shabbat. So when you ask yourself the question, what would Jesus do? He kept the Sabbath. It's very clear. There's multiple discussions in the gospel of him teaching in the synagogue on Shabbat. Multiple discussions. He kept it. All of the other disciples kept it. You need to keep it. If you're keeping Sunday worship, you have a Roman collar around your neck.
Yeah. That's right.
Okay, so that's part of it. The second thing is you have to recognize that your love of Yah, what does Jesus say? What does Mashiach say, Yahusha say in the Gospels? If you love me, keep my commandments. What does he say in Matthew 28? Go to the whole world and teach them to obey my commandments. What does 1 John say in chapter 5? This is the love of Yah, keeping his commandments. What does Revelation say 3 times? You will be judged by your works.
Yes.
What does Paul say in Romans? You will be judged by your works. What does James say? You will be judged by your works. What does Mashiach say to those who come and say, well, we prophesied in your name. We cast out demons in your name. We did all these wonders. And he says, get away from me. I do not know you. Why? Because you are workers of iniquity.
Yeah.
Because you are lawless. Because you are Torahless. Because you've transgressed the Torah. Because and he says it, these are the words of Mashiach. You will not enter the kingdom when you are a transgressor of the Torah. What is the Torah? The Torah is not Moshe's opinion. The Torah is the handwritten dictates of Yah. He wrote it. He told you. So you use all of Scripture for instruction. The Torah is not law. The Torah is instruction.
Yes.
You use all of Scripture for instruction. Paul tells you this. All of Scripture can be used for instruction. Use the Scripture for instruction to know how you are supposed to walk. Because guess what? You need to be different than the world.
Yes.
And if you're not different than the world, then you're still in Babylon. There you go. Libertas, the pagan goddess. Is this the God that is referenced in the Pledge of Allegiance? You know, one nation under God. Which God? Libertas? Helios? Baphomet? Isis, Horus, Set? Eh? Which God is the one nation under?
This is what we fight. Yeah.
Yeah.
And when you said about the NATO and the Italy, the Vatican, I was reminded the Catholic Church, it means universal. It shows you that grip that we are under. How can the Catholic Church mean universal? But it shows you the dictatorship, everything that you surmised in last 20 minutes here.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very important. You know, it's so important that we look to see, and I want to encourage everybody here that you know, you want to be able to study to show yourself approved. You
Yeah.
want to be able to read the scripture with your eyes open and see. Leave off with the idea that, oh, my pastor said. You need to be able to, in order to be a king and a priest, you need to be able to justify your faith by yourself, which means you're going to have to read the text. You have to read the text. You know, in the Jewish world, the definition of an ignoramus is someone who's read the Bible only once, right? That's the definition of an ignoramus. You know, what does that make you if you've never even read the whole script? You need
Mm.
to read all of it and compare and think and go through it and figure out what is being said and spend your time immersed in scripture so that you can see what's there. And when you do, you'll find the truth. And when you find the truth, you're going to say, this is a lot different than what they kept telling me. Yeah, here we
Yeah.
go. Yeah, this is Washington, D.C. When you look at these slides, Jesse, this
Mhm.
is this is Google Earth. That's the map of Washington, D.C. And at the very point, the bottom point of that pentagram, and it's pointed south like that, it's pointed down like a pentagram.
Mhm.
That's the White House.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. With what you were saying, yeah. Yeah.
And
And
so, you know, when you realize, it's taken me a long time to realize this. I didn't realize it. I mean, I was a constitutional guy, loved the Constitution, fighting for the nation, blah, 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 blah. But I didn't realize that the Constitution represented an overthrow of what were 12 Christian theocracies that were overthrown by a secular deist, a polygamous, you know, polytheist government. You know, Congress shall make no law respecting any establishment of religion, right? Because we're polytheist. You can tell they're polytheist when you look at the facade above the Supreme Court. They have Moses on one side and Confucius on the other. You know, if you read Marbury versus Madison, it opens up with Confucius say, "Man who tie bell to tiger, be one to untie it." Right?
mm,
I don't recall Confucius being
yeah.
cited in any case ever, but nonetheless, he's on the Capitol building, right?
Mm,
Confucius.
mm,
And then, if you go to the next slide, you'll also see that Washington. See, now this is the Capitol building. The
mhm.
grounds around the Capitol building are a giant owl.
Yeah.
And an owl, of course, is an occult symbol representing, you know, a demon, right? And then and again, like if you spend any time, I spent some time in the Capitol walking the mall.
Mm,
That's this area that runs from the Capitol all the way down to the Lincoln Memorial. And I think if you go to the next slide, you might see it too. You can see that this
So they
is,
worship the owl because the owl is, I've forgotten the word, but one that can see in the dark. And so for
yeah,
that, they see this darkness element to it.
it's a darkness to it. Yeah, now this is the compass and square of the Masons over the top of the Capitol Mall. And the Capitol Mall has the Lincoln Memorial here at the bottom, the U.S. Capitol at the top. But what you can't see is that at the top is kind of like the brain, if you will. So you have the ego, which is the Capitol. Then you have the super ego, which is the Supreme Court. And you have the id, which is the Jefferson Library. Then you come down to the White House is the right hand. The Washington Monument is the phallus. And then the Lincoln Memorial are the feet trampling out the vintage of the grapes of wrath, right?
Mm,
That's why the Lincoln Memorial is at the bottom of the mall. And he's trampling out the vintage because guess what? This is an Adam Cadman, if you will, that represents Washington D.C. It's a persona, and it's a persona of death, and a persona of war, and a persona of battle.
mm,
And so down here around the Lincoln Memorial, you have the Vietnam Memorial, you have the Korean Memorial, and you have the World War II Memorial, right down there at the feet
right.
of what is America, right? And in the existence of America, there's only been 16 years when we haven't been at war since the nation was formed. 16 years total that we haven't been at war.
Mm,
And so you can see an owl, Masonic compass, and a satanic pentagram. And what is the name of our defense building? The Pentagon. It's also built in
mm,
the form of a pentagram.
yeah. And look at the shape. Yeah.
George Washington and the Baphomet. I mean, that speaks for itself.
Mm, look at it. Yeah. Wow. these slides, Stephen, if people email you at stephen@cepher.net, they can get the PowerPoint from you. Is that right?
Yeah, although I believe Jonathan has it up at Cepher.net too. If you go to the video collection and you go to Judgment on the House of Babylon and you click on that, it will take you to both the video and the PowerPoint in a PDF format. So you'll be able to get it in two different ways, and you can get that on Cepher.net.
Okay.
And of course, I wanted to encourage too, while we're here, Jesse, we've got a ton of new classes coming up on Cepher Academy. We're going to be continuing Ancient Days with Ancient Days Part 2. We're going to be continuing the 10 Devarim with 10 Devarim Part 2. And we're going to be introducing critical thinking is beginning in March. That'll be next week, critical thinking. And we're also going to be introducing teaching on the common law. And in addition, we also have completed Piano from Scratch. So that whole program, which I think is 20 lessons, you can buy the whole package. And when you buy the whole package, you have the videos forever. You can download them and re-access them and study them over and over again until you master all the skills that are there. Okay. Yeah. And then, of course, we have the Passover that's going to be this in Peoria. Actually, it's going to be earlier than that. We're going to
Pretoria, it should say. Sorry, it says Peoria. It's Pretoria.
Yeah, Pretoria. Yeah, Pretoria, South Africa. And then we're going to be in Cape Town too. So it's going to be a very full trip. I'm so looking forward to seeing Chris McIntyre and the other South Africans, where we can spend some time together in Pesach and in Matzah and doing the things we need to do. It's going to be an absolutely wonderful time. So
they're heavily in preparation now in the final month. So that's good. And, what Stephen said is important, that in the word it says that my people perish for a lack of knowledge, and we have to show ourselves worthy, approved of the word like never before. When you've seen everything chronologized as we have today, that's what it's about, so that we can speak these things, that we can see the word coming alive and how it is going to affect and how it encompasses our nation and us. And also it is our code for what we stand with and what we do not stand with. So Stephen, I really want to thank you today for giving so much. You, like me, your throat has been a challenge. I know how hard this week has been, and that's hard when you have to present the level that you do and just keep a focus. So many mistakes can happen. I don't know how you don't do it. I've done so many, but I do want to commend you for this week and what you have brought out, and today what you have catered for the audience, asking you to bring this to them. So I just want to end with reading Revelations 18, just 4-11, because it encapsulates everything that has been spoken here today, and a good way to end. So, and I heard another voice from heaven saying, "Come out of her, my people, that ye may not be partakers of her sin, and that ye receive not of her plagues. For her sins have reached unto heaven, and Elohim has remembered her iniquities. Reward her as she rewarded you, and double unto her double according to her works in the cup which she has filled to her double. And much she has glorified herself and lived deliciously. So much torment and sorrow give her. For she says in her heart, I sit as a queen. I am no widow, and I shall see no sorrow. Therefore shall her plagues come in one day, death and mourning, famine, and she shall be utterly burned." That's what you were speaking of before. "For strong is Yahuwah Elohim who judges her. And the kings of the earth who have committed fornication and lived deliciously with her shall bewail her and lament for her. But when they see the smoke from her burning, standing afar off, the fire of her torment, saying, Alas, alas, the great city Babel, that mighty city, for in 1 hour is your judgment come. And the merchants of the earth shall weep and mourn over her, for no man buys their merchandise any more." What a wonderful way to end. Guys, we love you. Thank you. Yah bless you. I also want to thank our moderator. He's had a concussion and he's done such a fabulous job today. Been really, really ill. You know, they've been through a lot as a family as well, losing a family member. So Stuart, thank you for being here today and supporting us. Dr. P, thank you again. Our wonderful audience, thank you. Okay, take care. We'll see you in less than an hour and a half, Radio Free Alaska. If you're not tuned into that, just go to Telegram, put in that name, Radio Free Alaska. It's a public channel. It'll come up and you will hear Dr. P continue with his presentation. Take care, guys. All the best. See you soon.
Two people laughed. Two people cried. Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds.
Ever seen a blind man cross the road, trying to make the other side, baby? Ever seen a young girl growing old, trying to make herself a bride? So what becomes of you, my love?
Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds.
Pray that he's still out there.